Okay, picture this. A young sailor, a vengeful spirit, and a spy caught in a deadly romance. No, this isn't a novel or a play, but the world of Picaresque, the Decemberists' most theatrical and ambitious album. But how did a group of indie rockers turn history and tragedy and folklore into one of the most celebrated indie records of the 2000s? Let's explore that a bit.
A lot of tragic stories, but that's kind of in keeping with just how I write, I guess.
Hi, I'm Andy Fenstermaker, host of Poetic Wax, a weekly music history series and podcast where I dig into the record collection I've been building since the 1990s to explore the sometimes little-known history of a band, album, or song from within. In December of 2005, the Decemberists unleashed Picaresque, a sprawling theatrical masterpiece that cemented their reputation as indie rock's most ambitious storytellers. With its rich cinematic narratives and grand orchestration, the album transports listeners into a world of rogues, of lovers, of seafarers, and busboys, blurring the lines between folk ballads and historical epics. Recorded in a converted church in Portland, Oregon, Picaresque marked an evolution in the Decemberists' sound, incorporating fuller orchestration and more dramatic arrangements. I mean, that was what drew me to the band in the first place. Songs like Shanty for the Arethusa off of Her Majesty the Decemberists from 2003. Produced by Chris Walla of Death Cab for Cutie, the album built upon the folk and Baroque pop elements of their previous work while pushing toward even greater theatrics. The setting of the recording, a former Baptist church, added to the unique character of the album. The natural acoustics and grand space helped shape the record's lush, resonant sound. The unconventional environment also fostered an atmosphere of creativity, allowing the band to experiment with elaborate arrangements and instrumentation.
Initially, I had gone in there and had walked through with the owner, David, and it said, and had assumed that most of that stuff was going to be out of there. And I said, well, you'll move the pews, right? And he's like, oh, yeah, I can move the pews out and move some of these toys and things out of the way. It's like, oh, yeah, that'll be gone. And then when we went in to start setting it up, all the stuff was, not a thing had been moved.
This album is packed with gems, each with its own story to tell.
Some of the stories are of my invention. Some of them are borrowed from either, folk tales or stories or, historical events.
How about we do a rundown? The Infanta is a bombastic opening track that immediately immerses the listener in a royal procession, featuring heavy percussion and soaring instrumentation. Now with the Infanta, I have to call out that driving opening riff that just carries the song along. That pounding guitar is just so good. Then you have We Both Go Down Together, which is a tragic love story laced with class struggle that pairs Colin Meloy's evocative lyrics with swelling orchestration.
You come from parents wanting a childhood rough and rotten. I come from wealth and beauty, untouched by work or duty.
Then there's Eli the Barrow Boy. You get a stripped-down folk ballad here, detailing the life and ghostly lament of a poor street vendor, showcasing the band's ability to craft haunting, character-driven narratives. Of course, they've kind of always been about that, haven't they?
Eli the Barrow Boy of the old town sells coal and marigolds and he cries out all down the day.
A fan favorite, The Sporting Life, is a tongue-in-cheek brass-infused ode to the agony of athletic failure, bringing levity to the album's more dramatic moments. And a personal favorite, the Bagman's Gambit, is a Cold War-era spy romance set against a sprawling, dynamically shifting arrangement. The song's elaborate storytelling reflects Meloy's fascination with espionage narratives, building tension through dramatic musical shifts. Another favorite, I mean, honestly, the whole album is favorites, right? On the Bus Mall, a rare departure from the Decemberists' usual historical themes. This song tells the poignant story of teenage runaways and street hustlers, painting a deeply human and contemporary portrait, with a little bit of a queer twist. Another fan favorite is 16 Military Wives, which is a sharp, politically charged critique of American imperialism, dressed as an infectious, almost theatrical march.
Cheer them on to their rifles,
The last one I'll touch on is probably my favorite on the album, The Mariner's Revenge. This is perhaps the album's most iconic track as far as theatrics go. The sprawling shanty recounts a dramatic tale of betrayal, of revenge, of survival, all of which takes place inside the belly of a whale, fully embracing the band's love for storytelling and melodrama.
until a priory took pity and hired me to keep their vestry nice and neat, but never once in the employ of these holy men. Did I ever once set my mind from the thought of revenge? One night I overheard the pirate's changing words.
Okay, so upon its release, Picaresque was met with a bit of critical acclaim. It was praised for its literary depth and adventurous spirit. It became a defining album for the Decemberists, bridging this indie folk roots that they had with Castaways and Cutouts with a more elaborate theatrical style that would continue on albums like Hazard of Love, The Crane Wife, and I mean, even as far as 2024's As It Ever Was, So It Will Be Again. Picaresque also helped propel the band towards mainstream recognition, setting the stage for their eventual major label debut. Fans and critics alike continue to regard Picaresque as one of the Decemberists' most essential works. It set a high benchmark for storytelling in indie rock. Beyond the Decemberists themselves, Picaresque had a broader impact on indie rock, inspiring a wave of bands that embraced elaborate storytelling, literary lyricism, and theatrical arrangements. It demonstrated that indie rock could be ambitious and narrative-driven without losing its accessibility. In an era dominated by garage rock revivals and lo-fi aesthetics, Picaresque kinda stood apart, more like Funeral by Arcade Fire. It proved that intricate folk-infused orchestration had a place within indie landscape. It took that from Funeral by Arcade Fire, and it narrated it in an elaborate way. And many later acts, from Fleet Foxes to the Lumineers, would carry forward elements of its grand storytelling-centric approach. Bands like Neutral Milk Hotel had already set the precedent for blending surreal storytelling with indie folk, and Picaresque further built upon that tradition with its historical literary themes. Additionally, groups like Beirut would come to echo the Decemberists' adventurous spirit, incorporating rich instrumentation and old world influences into their sound, much like Picaresque did with its grand theatrical arrangements. But of course, Beirut being more Eastern European. Whether through the grandeur of the Infanta or the melancholic beauty of Eli the Barrow Boy, or even the darkly cinematic theatrics of the Mariner's Revenge song, Picaresque remains a remarkable collection of songs that transport listeners to a world of rogues, of sailors, and once again, of dreamers. Even now, more than 2 decades after its release, its spirit of adventure and poetic craftsmanship continues to captivate audiences, ensuring its place in the pantheon of indie rock classics.